Welcome back, guys, to another episode of Bodybuilding and Bullshit. Today's guests, I'm going to look over here, is Barret Jones and Jane Scharf. That's how you say your last name?
Oh,
Scharf. Scarf? Okay, yeah. Okay, because I see the C and then the SCH, so the Scarf. Okay, from MJS Legal Service, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much for coming on. I heard a bit about your story from Ron there, Barry. So yeah, I just kind of wanted to get on and talk to you about what you've been dealing with in the past, well, I guess the past year now, because we've hit the anniversary. So not sure if you had a chance to take a look at the video I did with Ian. So this is like a perfect kind of follow up for what we did with him. He kind of touched on what was going on for them in the States there in New Jersey, but you know, we're going to actually touch on what's happening here at home in Canada. Yep. So yeah, if you just kind of want to take a few seconds, just introduce yourself, talk a little bit about who you are, what you're doing, what your profession is.
For sure. Actually, just got off the phone with Ron. I gave him a call before our meeting here. He's pretty enthusiastic about it because it's quite important to him, obviously, that people get in the gyms and keep exercising, and for many reasons, some personal to him, obviously, right? No, again, we've been open pretty much the whole time. About a year ago when this all started, we just knew from the start that something wasn't quite right about it and just stood our ground. I mean, I've owned gyms for over 25 years now. I've had gyms in different places. And out here, there's bylaw, there's police. I mean, they're around. Definitely, we're in a smaller town. But yeah, we just kind of ducked under the radar for a while until they started kind of getting a little bit escalating with their harassment and fines and that kind of stuff, which we still stood our ground. And literally, we actually went proactive and actually did a lawsuit against them for small claims for the extra harassment they were giving to our clients as they were leaving and that kind of stuff. So, I mean, there's lots that can be done. Again, Jane can get into more of what your options are when it comes to defending yourself and your business and your rights. But yeah, I mean, it's been for us, it's been a pretty normal, emotional year, but our clientele definitely is feeling it. Some don't want to come out, some don't want to risk it. The new people do want to come out that are more open-minded to the actual facts of what's going on. So there's been a clientele change. We haven't really hurt financially that much, but it's been a situation where you definitely have to find the clients that are more on side with this, right? So,
yeah,
I mean,
definitely.
It's been a bit of an adventure for sure.
And then Jane, how long have you been working in the legal field?
40 years. I have 40 years experience.
Okay, 40 years. And what got you actually into the field of law?
Advocacy in different areas in education and disability rights, insurance claims, things like that. I did the first business that I was in was with representing injured workers with WSIB claims. I have a particular interest with regard to masks and you know, because that falls into the same area as disability rights and so on, and then rights in general. That has been a big focus of mine all through my career. Doing a lot of advocacy. You want to, you know, put your best foot forward in terms of, you know, what your rights are and your best, you know, your best legal position. And that has led me into looking at defense of business, churches, protests, that kind of thing. That's been a real high interest of mine, and the masking.
Oh yeah, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people interested in what you're going to have to say tonight. So let's just kind of back it up there, Barry. Just when you were explaining that you gym owner, just in case there's some people who may not know who you are, where you're from, just talk a little bit about your gym, what city it is, what province.
For sure, we're in Ontario. We're in Russell. We're literally about 25 minutes outside of Ottawa. So we still have clientele that come from the Ottawa area. Actually, quite a bit of clients from all over, but people will travel 25, 30 minutes to see us, no problem. I was in Ottawa for years before I came out here. And so again, you're more under the microscope out here for sure. I mean, there's other gyms in Ottawa that are staying open, like Zach there at a foot above fitness. I mean, he's doing quite a lot in his area there. But again, like they meet you and the police will come, and you know, but you have to learn how to deal with it, and they go away. And in fact, like every law enforcement agency in the district out here received a letter from this lady basically stating our rights and our Bill of Rights and how they can't do more than come around and say, here's a ticket. And for those that don't know, those tickets aren't going anywhere. If you sign and put not guilty and send it into the court, they're not sent in by the other side. So no one's being held on these tickets. I know 20 plus people, business owners, etc. And these are pretty much just scare tactics, right?
Yeah. So far, nobody's really had any further. I can't think of the word. Nothing further has come with these tickets. Basically, they're signing in not guilty. They sent it in, and they have. There's been no further contact.
Yeah. No
okay. Cool. Yeah. So I want to actually kind of push back to the beginning. So with your gym, like when COVID hit everybody at the same time, so almost in March. When we spoke, you told me that you basically only had a shutdown of maybe 1 month in the entire year so far. What kind of led to that event? So did you close right away? Were you kind of resistant at the beginning and then just felt a little pressure and decided to do a close? Can you just kind of like touch on the past year? What led you to this point? You know, what made you decide to go and seek legal action?
No, from the start we stayed open. The only time we did close was January 11th of this year to February 11th, 1 month exactly. And that was more just to get our ducks in a row legally, more so because bylaw had been literally sitting in our parking lot harassing clientele as they left. They knew by then not to come to my door anymore because I had enough of it, but they're catching people outside, off the property. Who are you? Where are you going? Let me see your license. If I don't get your license, I'm gonna write down your license plate and find out where you, all this above and beyond stuff. So in fact, that's where the harassment suit came from.
Is that actually even legal? Like, can the law enforcement actually sit outside of an establishment and stop people who are going in and out of your business?
Off the property, they can sit there all they want. What they were doing and saying to people is far beyond their recommended protocol. Let's put it that way. Like you can't really, if you don't want to show them or produce ID and you're not in the wrong doing anything. And that's kind of where it came into it, that a month we were closed. When that mandate came out for the red zone out here, it was if you had your kinesiology, if you had your physical therapy, which I have both of those, or if you're working with pretty much Olympic level or internationally recognized athletes, which OPA, IFBB athletes are, if you're working with those people, you're allowed to stay open. And they basically said nope to that as well. The bylaw person in general that we're working with out here, she, for some reason, just does not march to the drummer she's supposed to, and she tries to bend the rules to her own accord. So that's why we ended up taking the extra steps and saying, no, you can't make up the rules as you go. In the bylaw is those kind of athletes can be worked out here. Tried to do that, and they still kept plugging people outside. So they stepped over the bounds, and actually, when we did file the suit against them, there hasn't been any response to it, and the time period is lapsed. So I won't get into what the outcome, but it's positive in our favor. It's financial, and it's a good thing because people should know that can be a thing that can happen, right?
I faced something similar when I had a show last year that we were looking at photographers coming in, and in Manitoba, that's where I was hosting my event. They were allowing sports teams and stuff like this to come in without quarantine. And when we tried to approach them with the idea, like, listen, they're official photographers working for the IFBB under the NPC worldwide. Do they have to quarantine? They said, no, sorry, bodybuilding doesn't fit. It's not, I guess it wasn't to what they thought was a standard, but to us in the industry, for real, it's a sport, right? So there's so much gray area, and it's a shame that they're kind of picking favorites, and it's almost like they are choosing who can and who can't, and then they don't agree. Okay, no, you're not important. Walmart can stay open, but no, you guys can't.
When I spoke to Ron about it initially, I said, well, the IFBB does have an international leg of it. And so on one end of it, he's IFBB Canada, right? But IFBB International is a thing, and he's a representative of them as well. So again, that's kind of a loophole. There is bodybuilding on that side of it that can be deemed Olympic recognized, right? But these guys didn't want to hear even besides that, physical therapy, kinesiology, that's basic stuff that if you hold the degrees and can show them, which I did. No, we talked to the doctor at Eastern Ontario Health Unit. No, sorry. They kept trying to reinvent the rules. It's almost like a vendetta almost for some reason. We're a target. We're the only gym out here for about a 15-20 minute drive. So it's pretty easy to have a target on us, right?
Thing I think that developed is at one point the bylaw wanted to bring the OPP to be involved, and pretty much they didn't.
Yeah.
They didn't push anything. They asked questions about his exemption for providing athletes with training, and then they just kind of left it alone and receded. Didn't proceed with them at all, and that's a long time ago.
Yeah, I gotta
That's like
say,
2 months ago.
I gotta say they were actually, the Ontario OPP was very good about it. So why we closed for that 1 month, I'll tell you, because the harassment got to a level where I'm comfortable with any level of harassment. They stay outside my place, I don't care. When my customers are getting, uncomfortable coming here, then I have to draw the line and say, okay, we're taking a month and we're gonna figure this out in a better way, right? OPP got involved because they were supposed to be coming on board to support the bylaw people. That never happened, but a liaison officer reached out to me. And he was actually very straightforward. He's like, listen, I'm a lifter. I know what's going on, you guys. I support you, but I can't really support you. But let's see what we can do. He recommended that I message or email the Minister of Sport. So I did that. I messaged her, and that went nowhere. No response and nothing. Very disappointed there. But again, any minister speaking out about anything right now is showing the door, right? So I mean, I don't blame her for not getting involved, but I do, because it's her job to get involved in these kind of situations. And at that point, our dispute was still, these are athletes and these are people that are in need of training that still fall under the bylaw that I'm supposed to be able to help them, right? So I mean, that all aside, though, the bigger situation is gym should be open regardless of what kind of athlete you're training or what kind of person you're training. The mental health aspect, I mean, everything to do with exercise and training shouldn't be a question. I mean, like I said, I've had gyms forever, and they're not dirty places. They're not places where germs. I mean, if anything, I got reprimanded a few years ago for using too strong of a cleaner. Like, I mean,
Well, even things like diabetes and heart and
Yeah.
all of that, your conditioning is going to help.
They've never once really talked on the health aspects, right? So they never talked about eating healthy. They've never talked about, hey, get in the gym, make sure you're out moving. It's all just like, hey, sit in your house, lock yourself in your room, drink some alcohol, smoke some weed, and don't worry, you can still go to Walmart and buy your junk food. And it's getting crazy, right? So last year, I guess from last year till now, we've all heard the stories of, like, say, Ian with his $15,000 a day and his fines and this kind of stuff. What kind of fines are you looking at? Like, what kind of stuff are they trying to present you with?
Honestly, they hit me with one fine of $880. And again, we put not guilty, sent it into court, and it disappeared. There's no record of it. And I can say that about 20 plus other people that have businesses that they are not being put in from the other end. If you hand them in, they're like, no, we have no record of that. So it's more just to go, oh my God, just take it, I'm scared, and people to back off and not stay involved. But I mean, the whole problem is, and Jane can get into it, but this is a federal issue, and they're trying to deal with it provincially, and they have no authority to do that, right?
Okay.
So that's kind of an area she can get into a bit more after if you like. But I mean, it's a bit scary to anybody to stand there and say, okay, I'm not going to believe this person in a uniform. But again, like, I'm sure you've had jobs over the years where you do a job because the boss told you to, and you just did it. Maybe you question a little bit to yourself, but there is a lot of these police officers or by law are executing without thinking. And again, as a police officer, you should be able to entrust that you're given the right information. But when there's an agenda behind things, and let's face it, any place where people can get together, feel good, and be happy, and talk amongst each other is not encouraged right now. From a restaurant to a movie theater to a gym to a church to a nightclub. No, don't get together, people. It's dangerous. Yeah, it's dangerous because ideas spread fast and truth spreads fast, right? So
yeah, so it's more just the participant kind of going along willingly is basically what you're saying, where you're speaking from a year of experience at it, only an $800 fine, a few people standing in front of your business harassing some people. But aside from that, it doesn't seem like you've really had much resistance, or am I wrong?
No, you're right, but that's because of the way we treated it. We treated it like, no, we know this is wrong. We know this is not what should be really happening as business owners, as citizens. Got the proper counsel and advice on it, and then went on the offensive. And a letter was sent to every law enforcement agency out here saying, sure, come drop your tickets, but don't overstep your boundaries. And basically every like a chief or whatever would be at whatever district was given that to know that, yeah, you can't send your officers out or your bylaw people out just willy-nilly to go and hand these things out without knowing that some people are going to know what you're up to, that you can't just hand these things out that are scare tactics to freak people out. And so many of the other businesses that have had major demonstrations, those have gone nowhere either. I mean, it seems to be, I mean, Zach got a foot above there in Ottawa. He's got 6 cop cars sitting outside of his place, and 5 bylaw people and 6 cops at the door. And I mean, it's just theater, and they go away.
And maybe Jane, this is just something that probably you can address, is what's to these people when they're approaching your business, when they don't want to leave. So say you're having officials, government officials, or you're having police officers, say 6 or 7, they're all standing face to face in your business telling you have to leave.
Prohibits the police from using force against the individual with regard to any provincial legislation. They can only use force with regard to criminal legislation, which is federal, and police are federally regulated, so they fall under the Canadian Bill of Rights. With provincial bylaw, they can issue a ticket, which you then subsequently have the opportunity to go to a hearing. Primarily what we're wanting businesses to know is that because of the Canadian Bill of Rights, the police and the municipal bylaw officers cannot use force. So they cannot force their business closed or force their church or their protest or whatever is going on. They can't force quarantine, PCR test, or vaccine, because that would be a violation of your fundamental rights, and they're not allowed to do that. Any matters that fall under federal jurisdiction fall under the Canadian Bill of Rights. So police are a federal jurisdiction. They're all regulated by the federal government, so they fall under there. And municipal bylaw officers also fall under there. They're peace officers. So they're in the criminal code. They're regulated under the criminal code. So they can't use force. They can hand you a ticket, which you get to debate later in court, whether it's constitutional or whether the application is accurate even. And but in the meantime, your business can continue. And they can continue giving you tickets, but that's it. That's all they have the authority to do with the provincial regulations.
Sorry, I was just curious because you're saying that they can't take you by force, but have you heard anything? There was a pastor actually in Alberta who's been arrested, and they still say he's been in jail for a month now. Yes. Because he refused to stop running his church. They wanted him to step down. Have you heard anything about this?
Yes, I have been following that. In fact, I'm going out there this weekend to give a talk on the Canadian Bill of Rights as related to that issue. The final word is that he pleaded guilty to a breach.
Okay.
He didn't, whatever the initial charge was that they held him on, they dropped that one. So they've maintained their bylaw ticket, which will be heard in May, and he only pled guilty on the breach. That's it. So he's still standing firm on his opposition to the actual measures themselves.
He pleaded guilty to a breach of what?
Well, apparently it's pretty sketchy because he didn't agree to any conditions of release, and they still charged him anyway. They gave him conditions, which is really, you're supposed to be an undertaking. You're supposed to agree to those conditions, but he didn't agree to them, and then they charged him anyway, and that was apparently what the breach was.
Okay.
He's out now, though.
He's out now. Yeah, I think he got out yesterday.
Okay. Yeah. So then, what I can kind of dive now that we're talking, because I'm planning to go to Cancun. I have a bodybuilding show in June, so I'm not sure how things are going to look by then. That's still a few months away. But what, as a Canadian citizen, what are my rights as a Canadian coming back into Canada? Do I have to provide a COVID test? Do I have to stay for the COVID test? Do I have to listen to them and follow them?
Well, legally, no. If you use the Bill of Rights, no.
Okay.
They can give you tickets. They can have some bylaw crap going on and give you tickets, but they can't touch you. They can't physically, detain you and drag you off somewhere. They're not legally allowed to do that. And there are people that are actually walking away. Some
Okay.
with tickets, some without tickets.
Okay, so this is I guess happening like after you pass through customs, because customs has a little bit more authority to either detain you or to hold you or any of this kind of stuff if you can't prove something. So are they,
Customs,
have you heard of them?
Canadian customs would also fall under the Canadian Bill of Rights. So they're not allowed to override your rights unless there's a federal act of parliament that expressly gives them the right to override. And so it would have to be something introduced in parliament, open to public, for debate, for votes, and it has to say, we are, you know, abandoning this right or that right. Not implicitly, like this COVID stuff, implicitly overrides your rights. They don't spell it out. They don't say your right to religion, your right to free speech, and so on. They just put it out there, and it implicitly overrides those rights. But in order to meet the conditions of the Canadian Bill of Rights, it has to be a federal act of parliament, not the government, parliament. So it has to be introduced as a bill and discussed by all parties and then voted 3 times and then passed. And it has to expressly state, we're going to override the right to religious expression or freedom of expression, and whatever it is going to be, it has to expressly state that. And I don't believe that we would ever allow such a bill to pass when it's done in full parliamentary process. And anything you sign, I heard sometimes the airport will get you to sign these documents that kind of consent to the crap. All you'd have to do for that is to sign without prejudice, which means that you're agreeing to anything in the contract that doesn't undermine a pre-existing right. So you have a pre-existing right for determination, health determination. It has to be express consent. You have a right to give express consent, and basically, you know, your liberty, so they can't be, you know, physically putting you someplace for quarantine, things like that. Everything is protected there in the Bill of Rights.
I think a lot of people are just, I mean, when faced with something like that, they're going along with it out of fear. I mean, if someone in uniform is like, come in with this way with me, most people will be like, oh, okay. But if you don't know your rights, then of course you're going to go along with that. It's hard. It's not, they'll get away with what they'll let them get away with. Right?
Yeah, take their ticket and then fight it later. And you can tell them you quarantine at home, thanks.
What about masks and stuff? So Barret, are you guys using masks in your gym? How's the social distancing, stuff like this?
Right here, we treat it like it's your choice. You want to wear one because you live with your 95-year-old grandmother, feel free, no judgment, no nothing. But here, if you don't want to, you don't have to. And it's been like that from the start. Honestly, we have, I mean, no one's up in your face here. I mean, you've trained all your life. You don't go up and, you know, you're not right up against somebody. You take your space, you do your stuff, you clean your stuff up when you're done, we clean up after you or whatever. And I mean, it's a clean environment. So I mean, obviously, like, this thing goes back to common sense. If you don't feel well, stay home. If you know you have any inkling whatsoever that you or someone you live with isn't feeling well, stay home. Like it's been since the dawn of time. Like I've never gone out going, I think I have the flu. Oh no, you stay home and look after yourself and others. So I mean, here it's you come to the door, it's your choice. I'd say maybe 1 in 50 does. It's usually because they either care for or look after someone that's over the age of 75 or so at home. I just want to take that extra precaution, and more power to them.
The Quarantine Act and how it's federal, because I actually read about this and how it's based on this. It seems, from what I read, it seems like it would trump everything. But whatever.
It's the purpose of the Quarantine Act is control the spread of communicable disease. So all of these provisions, like lockdown, mask, all that's all part of quarantine, and that's supposed to be federal. Any prohibitive law or penalty would have to come from the federal government. And in just a second, I'm gonna look up something here.
Fact checking.
Okay.
No, that's good. No, it's good to have the fact.
In the there's an act called the Emergency Act, Canadian Emergency Act, and it was put in place in 1988. And in the preamble, it says Whereas the governor and council, in taking such special temporary measures, that's measures for controlling, measures for dealing with an emergency, would be subject to the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms and the Canadian Bill of Rights, and must have regard to the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, particularly with respect to those fundamental rights that are not to be limited or abridged even in a national emergency. So basically what's happening now should be regulated federally, and whatever measures they take have to regard your rights. So they can, for example, they can make quarantine centers where you can go voluntarily. They can do contact tracing where you can participate. And that's how we've always done it. We've had communicable diseases, serious ones in this country many times. And that's what we do. We pretty much lock down the long-term health care facilities, which we didn't do, like back in March. They left them wide open. And they didn't start contact tracing until August. They didn't start in March, and those are the things that we've established in public health as the main features to control the spread of communicable disease. We didn't do either one of those things. Instead, we did a bunch of stuff that was not coming from any precedent, and certainly from my observation, I don't think it would have any effect, like locking down healthy people, masking children who don't even get it hardly, and if they do get it, they get it mildly. Like all of that doesn't even make sense when they're not doing the main things that they're supposed to be doing. So I think all of these measures are arguably unconstitutional, and not just because it violates rights, but also because it violates the process, the constitutional process, because the Constitution determines which level of government handles what. And it has already determined that the spread of communicable disease is federal. And yet the provinces are going on a big heyday here.
And then they're all completely different.
Yeah. With legislation that overrides your rights. And I just want to make one more point, and I think it's a really important one. With all of this going on, a lot of people were looking to the charter. They wanted the charter. They're saying, look at all these rights that are spelled out in the charter that are being violated. But the problem with using the charter is Section 1 of the charter allows the government to override your rights if they think they have a good enough reason to do so, like demonstratively, whatever, in a democratic society. And the problem with that is, in the face of it, the police are not the ones to be determining whether the government had the right or the grounds to override your rights. It has to be done by the court. So in the face of it, if you're just asserting your charter rights, the police can close your business down and can close your church down, can close your protest down, because they're not in a position. It's not their jurisdiction to decide if the government had a good enough reason for bringing in those COVID measures. A judge has to do that. So I say, let's not use the charter because it's got a hole in it. It's like, trying to go someplace in a boat with a hole in it. So better to use the Bill of Rights. There's no hole. So they can't override your rights, and that's the end of it, clearly. If you look at Section 1 and 2, it's easy to follow. Anybody watching here, if they want to look it up, Section 1 and 2, it shows you there's your rights. And in Section 2, it says they can't override them. So it's a simple matter, and you can use it for your, protect your business with police. And I think that a good portion of the police, in fact, I'm hoping the majority of the police, if we do assert our rights properly, will be empowered to say, no, we can't do that. But if we're saying charter, they have to say, too bad, because Section 1.
Flat out, okay, we're going to open our business based on the Bill of Rights. There should technically be no problems, and take the fine. Okay, whatever, we're going to deal with this later. Not guilty, send it away. And essentially, this is the process, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I would recommend. This is the letter I sent to police on February 11th. That's what it basically said, is that these businesses are going to be open contrary to the Emergency Management Civil Protection Act, and they'll accept a ticket and they'll deal with that in court. But in the meantime, We don't want police smashing down the businesses. And as far as I know, they didn't anywhere.
Sorry, guys. So for the people who are just seeing the screen change, we were having some difficulties with the connection, but we're back. So, yeah, I'm just gonna recap on the process for businesses and stuff. So basically, what we're being told, yes, is based on the Bill of Rights. We have the right to open our business, contact some legal advice, and Jane, you're saying to maybe present the authorities with a letter from a legal team, or is this something that we can do on our own to kind of get them to just leave us alone, give us a ticket, fine, but they don't have the right to harass us?
Yeah, I can Barry can send you a copy of the letter that we sent.
Okay. Yeah, that would be amazing. So if we can have that, and actually even Jane, if you want, I can present some contact information if you're okay with people contacting you further for things like this. But so for you, Barry, for your gym, everything's just moving along smooth. There's been no COVID cases. Have you had any issues with people coming down with this the virus? I myself have had it, so I know that it's out there.
Incidentally, that month we closed, about 2 days into it, a friend of our eldest here came back from Mexico. And now they here, the kids got it, we got it. But I mean, yeah, it's a flu, and it's definitely. I mean, yeah, we didn't run out and kiss everybody on the street. We stayed home. It got better, and Melissa and I both had it. I mean, we're all going to eventually get it, vaccine, no vaccine, or whatever. But yeah, it happened like we never stopped working. And then like 2 days into that month, we took to get extra help and that kind of stuff. Yeah, we both got it, and watched Netflix for 10 days. It got better. So I mean, it's like
what were the symptoms? What were the symptoms that you ended up experiencing?
One thing I noticed about this that's different from other flu is usually a flu takes a certain trajectory of how you're going to feel day 1, 2, 3. This one was kind of like, oh, I feel like this. Oh, I feel better. Oh no, I don't. It was kind of 2 steps forward, 1 step back for a bunch of days. Whereas Melissa, she's quite fair, and she had very itchy hands and feet, which is kind of a weird thing. You lose your taste for a few days, lose your smell for a few days. Besides that, it was kind of a regular flu, besides those little anomalies. But again, I mean, it's here, it's with us, and I mean, we didn't go run into the old folks' home and high-fiving people. We had it. We stayed home and did the right thing.
Yeah, exactly. For me, I had the same thing. I lost the taste and that kind of stuff. I had a little bit more of like extreme tired. Body felt a little bit wonky, and it was weird. So if anybody who has anxiety issues, once you start feeling that your body is going in a certain direction, for me, it messes with my head a little bit. So that was the hardest part, is dealing with the the feeling of not being normal kind of in your head. But yeah, I'm not like the most normal guy anyways, but so Jane, actually I had a question for you, just touching on the legal aspect. Is there anything that you see coming in the future? Is there your predictions? Do you see kind of what this is a setup for? I know everybody's a conspiracy theorist and they all have ideas. There's a lot of people out there. Chris Sky, I guess, is a big advocate, and he I've been watching his Instagrams, and I saw him, he was actually having some instances with the police there a few days ago with a live. He was freaking out in his car. Rightly so, though. When people show up and they just kind of want to take you away, I guess you would see this kind of stuff in a movie, but now it's starting to prove that this type of stuff is real, and it's really happening to the ones who
that's a prime example, though, right?
Are pushing back.
I mean, like, they swarmed his car. He sat there, said on his phone, "Call my lawyer, get help, call 911," and they did not drag him out of his car. They did not touch him. He basically stood his ground, and they backed off and went back to where they came from. A lot of other people would have been, "Oh, okay, this is it," gotten out. And so, I mean, I give him his approach is a little unique, but good for him. But he's definitely making some noise and getting a following. I mean, again, I don't care who the person is they're following, as long as their message is clear and precise, and it's in the right place,
Yeah, but I think it's important in any situation where you're wanting to assert your rights, to make the claim for the Canadian Bill of Rights, because that will give the cop that's dealing with it the authority to say no and to stand down. If you say nothing, or if you just say charter, it doesn't. In fact, it gives the license for them to continue. But if you give that, so I still believe that the majority of police do not approve of the direction that our country is going, and it will help them resist if we put that foot forward. Do you know what I mean by this? Like,
Yeah.
it's important to empower them as well, because
Yeah, because
we need
I've
we need them to stand down. Otherwise, we're done. Like, if our stuff that we've been seeing are psychological operations, and it's a small percentage of police that are doing that, and they're actually, the ones in Toronto are actually hired by Tory, the ones at Skelly's, Adamson Barbecue. That horse is out of the barn running around. There's a bill given to Adam for the police by the public health. So it was Toronto Public Health that hired off-duty police officers to go in there and put on that big show. And it was a show because they overstepped. The public health has no authority to go in and occupy somebody's property. Like, zero precedence, zero right to do that. And she went in and put a sign up. I was up there on the Friday, took a picture of the sign, and it said, Dr. Davila is occupying the property and she's invoking the Trespass to Property Act. And that's what they ended up charging him for, was first a violation of the trespass, and then they stepped it up because they put locks on his doors to assert this Trespass to Property Act, and he broke those locks. So they said that was obstruct police. And the whole thing was nonsense. It was never designed to be able to hold up legally, and it can't, but it scared people. It was a psych op. You know, it was like high profile, you know, very dramatic. You know, just as Adam comes out with his cuffs on, the horses come galloping up, you know, like, come on, and everybody's screaming, and then they forget to put a police in front of them. They have one behind them and one beside them, and then there's somebody from the crowd tries to pull them away from the police, and then they still don't put anybody in front of them after that. They still keep going. So to me, they were trying to put on a psych show. You know, they didn't want it blocked. They wanted a nice shot, you know, and they wanted an opportunity for the mics to come in his face so they could have a big psychological operation on us all. And it worked. I mean, everybody, I was completely like, what kind of, you know, and I was all upset. But then when the dust settled and it became evident that this wasn't Toronto police that did that. That was theater created by Tory and the public health. And it only represents a small little fraction of police and doesn't represent the whole Toronto police services. And in Ottawa, they never even did stuff like that. There's been several protests, large protests, right in the middle of lockdowns, and the police didn't do anything. And they would say publicly, they would say that they're not going to reduce the numbers or interfere because it's the right to protest.
Yeah, they have the luxury of still doing their job, whereas the people they're enforcing this on, they don't have work to go to. They've lost their businesses. They're dealing with all these repercussions that these people making the laws, enforcing the laws, or even just sitting back and looking at the laws, they don't have to deal with that. They're still getting their paycheck. They're still going to work. They're still able to have they do their little Zoom meeting at home and they're getting their pay just the same. What are the grounds for something to be so catastrophic where they can say, okay, we're going martial law, everybody's in their house, wear your mask, don't sit outside. And with that,
okay, I just read you earlier, the Emergency Act. Okay, that's our Martial Law Act. And they can't override your Canadian Bill of Rights, even in the case of a national emergency. It says right in there, 1988. So they're not allowed doing that.
Okay, so the Bill of Rights trumps. What about this curfew stuff? Because I don't know what you guys are in Ottawa or in Ontario. So do we have to listen to this curfew?
No, not legally.
Okay, so it's just all like,
yeah, it's a Bill of Rights. Yeah.
It's all for show, right? So if we're out and they want to give us a ticket, but will this ticket affect us on our licensing? Can a police officer now say, well, hey, listen, you're gonna get like -5 points now because you've been driving, or is it just a ticket as a personal?
I've never tried. Depends on where it is. In Ontario, it's not. they're not even registering most of them. I have an $880 ticket and they're not even registering them.
I'm not sure about Quebec, but out here now they don't get registered by their hands.
They might be
Yeah.
registering some, but certainly not all. And I'm not worried about a conviction on it.
If you plead guilty, if you say, "Oh yeah, I did it," then yeah. But if you're not guilty and send it through, and because I mean you're not guilty, you're not violating anything. You're within your rights, right?
And fortunately, in Toronto, the freedom movement in Toronto are embracing this Canadian Bill of Rights, and they're doing a lot of discussion. And whenever they're having confrontation with the police, they're saying the Bill of Rights. And the past 3 weeks, there's been no tickets and no arrests in Toronto. 3 weekends, not 3 weeks, 3 weekends.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
So that's
because if
pretty
we put
good.
that if we put that up on Instagram, those fact checkers will get you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but this is amazing stuff, because this is the stuff that you don't really hear, right? Like nobody's saying this type of thing, and the more that we can, I guess, get this out there, and guys like Chris Guy, even the ones in the States who are advocating it, you guys there, it's very important. So I'm happy we were able to kind of touch on some of this. One
thing we are working on is I am sending another letter to all police, so that'd be regional police, OPP, and RCMP, asking them questions with regard to their responsibilities pertaining to the emergency measures and the Canadian Bill of Rights. So that's, I think, a way of, raising awareness of it. Also, there are several roundtables being organized where we'll be inviting police officers, educators, health professionals, whatever, to join in a roundtable discussion about the Canadian Bill of Rights. So they can, and journalists also, to ask, discussion and ask questions and sort of bring up education. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's definitely important, something important for society to kind of understand, because I think for the most part everyone just is so they're all brainwashed. Everybody's just brainwashed that this is just the way it's going to be, and I'm just going to listen, and I just want it to go away. So the more I listen, the more faster it's just going to go away. But in the end, as we all see, it just continues and continues, and then we're on our third wave, and then the next thing is the fourth wave, and then it's never ending. It just always seems like there's going to be something and something. So
I see a change in the tides, though. I mean, I see people that are shifting their beliefs on this somewhat. I mean, after 12 months of empirical data, looking around and going, wait a minute, not everyone is dying in the streets. It's not what it's all cracked up to be. And, oh, my friend had it, I had it, whatever. People with common sense are kind of, again, their will to live and be out living their life is taking over their fear. I mean, slowly and surely, I see it happening. I belong on different sites as well with different gym owners and things. And right now, with businesses, it seems that people that started their businesses from ground zero with their bare hands are the biggest fighters in this. If you had handed something, given something, you inherited something, and it's not really yours from the first penny you made, you're a self-made guy. You understand. They're fighting harder for it. They're standing up and making a big difference. Because I mean, it's one thing that let go of something that you never gave birth to, right? It's these entrepreneurs that started from nothing that have built their careers over 25, 30 years, like you or myself, and Jane for that matter, that are making the difference, I think, because they have the fight in them. They know what it takes to overcome stuff that's insurmountable seemingly. And so, I mean, you put those skills to work. Well, same as the gym, man. Same as you've trained all your life. You contact with people. All it is one obstacle, and overcoming it step by step. So I mean, it's just you got to apply it to this and keep going. Right?
Yeah.
I saw a little video the other day. It's on Google, so anybody can look it up. It's an interview with a former KGB agent, and he describes the methodology that communists use to take over a country. And the primary objective is to demoralize the population, make them feel helpless to stop it. And it's that actual, psychological state that allows them to finish off the job. So that's an important thing to recognize, that we're not beat. Our police are not, they haven't been taken over yet. They're still there. They're still there to protect our rights. And we don't have to accept that we have no choices, that we have no rights, that we can't stop this. And it's really important for other people to catch on to that too. Like it's at the point now where so much information was, and I was part of that too, getting that information out about the agenda that they're planning, you know, with the 90% reduction in the population and all the vaccine forced everybody, all that stuff. But now I'm trying to, instead of, like, I'm convinced already, you know, it's a bad agenda, but I'm not anymore at the place where I'm saying we can't stop this. I think we can stop this. We have the numbers, we have the intelligence, we have the rights. You know, other countries may not have, they might have like a little slippery charter like our charter, but our Bill of Rights is there. And also this Emergency Act, also very strong. So together, that's a really solid legal base to come from. And if we put that forward and the government doesn't respect that, then that means there's no rule of law. So the gloves can come off. They don't have any more authority if they have no respect for the rule of law. You know what I mean? And I don't think it'll go there. I think that there is enough people in the military and in the police that do respect the rule of law, and that when we realize what our rights are and put them forward, it's going to happen.
Is there more lawyers that you know of, you know, coming together? I'm surprised there's no, well, I don't know if you could create a class action suit against this kind of thing, or is there lawyers kind of grouping together using, you know, each other's knowledge, moving as a unit to try to end this type of thing? What's going on?
Yeah, there is a legal challenge going through on the Adams Barbecue case. And what that is public health is seeking a permanent injunction against Skelly to force him to follow the COVID rules. And if they get that, that means that technically then they can use police once they get that court order. So that's going to change the, you know, the landscape quite a bit if the courts allow those kinds of judgments. So that's a really important case to watch. The lawyer is awesome. His name is Michael Swinwood from Ottawa. And I have talked about his main arguments that he's going to put forward. They're very strong. One of his main arguments is, who is the who? You know, how can provincial government turn around and say that they're getting instructions from a foreign body, unelected, and there's no reference in our constitution that says we're going to make public health decisions based on directives from an unelected foreign body. You know, so that was one of his main arguments, and that's a constitutional argument. So it's stronger than charter, because charter has that section 1 that makes it weak, but this is in the constitution itself. And then he has another one, which we talked on slightly earlier. It's about the responsibilities of federal government versus provincial government. And in section 91, that's where it gives the federal government the authority to be dealing with the communicable disease, controlling communicable disease. So that's his other argument, which is also strong, because it's not weakened by like section 1, like the charter is. And then he's also going to raise the fact that these measures override, you know, personal freedoms and rights as well. But they're not, you know, he doesn't have to depend on those. He's got those two strong constitutional arguments to put forward.
Okay, yeah, so definitely that's something that we need to be watching and seeing what the outcome is there, because that'll kind of dictate what happens further, is what you're saying?
Yeah. Okay. It's not a good thing if they get that order against him.
So when you say not a good thing, that's not a good thing for like the rest of us, or?
Yeah, it wouldn't be good for anybody, because as soon as you get in conflict with the public health, they'll be running to court to get a court order and say, we have a precedent here. We want a court order against this one and that one and the other one.
Yeah. Okay. So once they have something to kind of reference, then, you know, I guess it'll just continue to move forward in that trend.
Yeah.
Well, it's been super informative. I know you're running a gym there, and I don't want to keep you, Jane, any longer, but hopefully everything turned out great. Unfortunately, there's a few parts in this podcast that might go frozen, so I'm gonna have to try to do my best editing. And I know right now I'm sitting in my son's room. Like I said, he's got his little Marvel and all his toys. So my lighting is just horrible, and I'm trying to hold my phone, so hopefully I'm not bouncing around. So I'll do my best in the editing process. I'll try to get the message out there. I'll give you guys another moment if there's anything closing you want to say. Barry, if you just want to send a message out there to any small business, if you want to talk to your members, if there's something that you want to just kind of let people know about what you're doing or what's going on, this is your chance. I'll let you kind of end it, and then Jane, I'll let you do the same.
Well, we're pretty much in touch with our members on a daily basis already, and letting them know where we stand and respecting where they stand. But again, any business out there that wants to follow these guidelines and push back, I mean, it's there. It's going to be done if you have the guts to do it. And that's just the thing. It's having that ability to stand there and not flinch and not fail when they show up in uniform, or they hand you a ticket, or they threaten things. I mean, they're counting on it. They're counting on you being weak and falling for this. So I mean, I don't want to pin a target on my head here or anything, but I mean, honestly, rights are rights. And I mean, honestly, I'd rather fight for our rights now and than have none to fight for later and be done with. I mean, why someone wouldn't set up a fight for their business right now in a free country like Canada, where you actually can and there's methods to do it. It's beyond me. It's you've given up, and you need to not give up. You need to keep going and use the Bill of Rights as and some good legal counsel like I have, and push forward for sure. Okay.
And
I think most people are probably in denial. I think that's the reason why. So most people
a
probably are
lot
not
of
in
people,
the push.
a lot of people are focused on the charter. They don't realize it's got a hole in it. So my message is for people to look up the Bill of Rights, Canadian Bill of Rights. You can find it on Google, and look at particularly at section 1 and 2, and you'll see clearly what your rights are and the fact that the government cannot override them, period. And then I also would like them to look at the preamble in the Emergency Act, the Canadian Emergency Act Federal, which is 1988. That's proof that the Bill of Rights is still valid, because that's 6 years after the charter, right? So there's your proof. And it's also proof that our system doesn't allow this kind of override that they're doing with the emergency measures.
Perfect. Yeah, and like you said, so far right now, there's been no proof otherwise that they've actually overrid it anyways, right? So they would have to do the whole voting process, make it open to the public, and we would have it say. Exactly. So it wouldn't be up to every individual provincial government to be enforcing this. It would be straight across the board, federal law. Here you go, bang, done.
Yes, and all parties are represented there too. It's not just the government in the parliament. It's all of our representatives are there. So it's more broadly representing everyone, and it's open discussion. I don't think it would pass. Like if they introduced, okay, let's pass something that's going to override everybody's rights. I don't think that would pass. Yeah, exactly. Because it would override their mother's rights. It would override their brother, their sister. There'd be a lot of resistance.
Yeah, it's been a super informative hour with you guys. Thank you so much for coming on here. Again, I apologize for all the video issues, and I'm sorry for interrupting and saying we froze.
Hashtag we got this.
Hashtag we got this, or just say no, right? That's the other one. Hashtag just say no. Okay, perfect. You guys have a great evening. Again, nice to have you guys on here. And if there's anything, please reach out to me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.